Hey Netcode-Hub channel community, are you tired of juggling multiple API endpoints in your microservices architecture? What if I told you there is a way to streamline your API management, enhance security, and improve performance all at once? Today, we are diving into the world of API gateways, and specifically, we will be using Ocelot to create and configure a powerful gateway for our .NET Web APIs. But before we dive right into this, let's first understand what an API gateway is, and also why Ocelot is a go-to choice for API gateway in .NET environment. Imagine you are managing a growing application with multiple microservices, each with its own API. Without an API gateway, all your clients who will be accessing your app need to know the URLs of each service, handle different authentication mechanisms, and deal with load balancing manually. This complexity can lead to security vulnerabilities, performance issues, and maintenance headaches. Now, let's enter Ocelot. Ocelot simplifies this by providing a single entry point for all APIs, and it can also handle routing, authentication, rate limiting, and load balancing efficiently. It's easy to set up and configure, making it perfect for both beginners and seasoned developers. It also supports a wide range of features like request aggregation, load balancing, rate limiting, authentication, and a lot. It also has a wide range of community support. All this come together to make Ocelot the best choice for microservice. Alright, so now let's jump right into our Visual Studio. We're going to create 3 projects. 2 of them will be sub APIs. The last one is going to be our gateway, the API gateway. Now we're going to configure the 2 APIs so that they can be get called through the gateway. So the gateway is going to be like a door to room. Now it is through the gateway that user can have access to our endpoint or our API that we have in our microservices. Now click on create new project so we can have access to the project template. We're going to create blank solution, then choose location. Now let's create this solution. So let's add the various projects. So we go to solution, right click on the solution name, then we're going to add new project. And here we need to choose our web API and click on next. But make sure you give it name first. So let's say we're going to have maybe you're going to have a weather forecast and another API known as user. Okay, so this is going to be our weather forecast API. So maybe I can say this is weather API. Then let's create this. So this API is going to perform CRUD on weather forecast. So we can create, read, update, and delete. Let's also add another one which is going to work on user. Maybe we can perform CRUD on user. So new project, the same API. And now here we can say that this is identity. So that's our second API. Now these 2 API come together to form our microservice, but we need to have gateway. So let's create this, and after that we're going to create our gateway. Our gateway also going to be an API, but in this we're not going to expose controller. So let's see, let's add the next one, new project, and here I'm going to say this is gateway. Click on next. So you can see when you check the solution, we have 3 projects in here. We have our 2 APIs and we have our gateway. Now first thing that we need to do here is when you go to our gateway, we don't want to expose any UI, so I am going to remove this controller. I'm not mapping any controller, so we can save this. Now the next thing I'm going to do here is let's try to do something small with each API that we have at SAPS. So I need to check the identity from our controller. You can see that we have weather forecast, and I'm going to make this as maybe users. So user controller, and now this user controller, maybe we have these names. Let's say this is Netcode. I have the hub, yes, and I have maybe Freddy's here. Let's say this is the list that we have, and as soon as we call this endpoint, it's going to return this. So this is a single or one API which is responsible of performing CRUD on the user. So here we have the users available here. Let's remove all this. And also let's make this as action results. Then return. Okay. Let's specify our users in there. Alright, so we're going to return this. API is going to return user. Okay, let's go to the next API, and that is the weather. And you know weather is returning weather, right? Here we want to make it API/user. So API/user. When you go to the weather forecast tool, we're going to do the same. So click on yours, and I'll follow along. Yeah, so API/weather forecast, and here we are returning what you see in here, default one. That's what we are returning. Let me get rid of this so that we can have weather forecast, and automatically we're gonna have access to this get method. Good. So we have two individual powerful endpoints which will work. Yes, we can try this and see. So let's build solution first. So this is done. Now we can go ahead and now run both. So we have an identity and now weather. Let's start running this weather, and let's also run the identity when this is done. So you can see that we have this weather API, and it is returning weather data, default one. Let's also choose identity, and now let's run this to return the list of users that we have in here. So execute. Now you can see here we have this. So our two APIs are working perfectly here. Now let's go to the Ocelot, and now let's see what we can do to configure our gateway. Let's close this. Now when you go to the solution, to our gateway API, you know, in our program.cs file, maybe let's click on it. We don't want to expose this swagger, so we can remove this. So let's streamline this, and we are not adding controllers. Okay, the same thing applies to this. Now what we're going to do here is let's go to our packages, dependencies, and you can see that we have the swashback we are not using, so you can remove this package because we don't need the endpoint here. Yeah, so we have a very simple app. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do here is we need to install the Ocelot package. So I click on the dependencies, and now manage NuGet packages, and in here let's search for Ocelot. And that is this. So let's get this package installed. Alright, so now that we have this package installed, I'm going to reboot the whole project again to make sure everything is working as expected. So now we're done with the building. We go to our project. Now you want to have our API or our port in range. So we have 3 project in here. Let's go and specify it. So let's go to, from the gateway, launch.json, and then in here we can have access to our API gateways. Okay, that is a port. The gateway here, that is a port. Okay, so you can see from here we are having 7083 and 5175 for HTTP and HTTPS. Now for our gateway, we need to run on HTTPS, but when you have your SAP APIs on a network whereby this network is protected, you can run them on HTTP because there's no external access to these APIs. All client or all requests going to be hit on the gateway. So gateway must run on HTTPS, and the SAPS one can also run on the HTTP. Now let's see what to do from the, this is a gateway, so it is running on 708 3. So let's make it 7000. So this is running on 7000 for our port. Now let's go to our identity. From this identity, you can see we have properties folder, launch settings. You click on it, and now let's make this for an HTTP to run on 7001. The same thing applies here, 7001. And now you can see it has launch URL to Swagger. Okay, so although we have it here, we can also access it, but for now let's leave the launch URL as Swagger in there, because at least we have this package installed, and as soon as we run, we're going to have the UI so we can check it ourselves. All that you need to do here is to change the application URL, as I've done mine. You should do yours. Good. Now let's go and do the same thing to the weather project. We go to the properties folder, and now in here from the launch settings for HTTP 7002. Okay, so gateway is 7000, identity is 7001, weather forecast is 7002. So you can see we have this in range from 7000 to 7003. That is what we have as a range of our ports for this microservice that we are creating. Good. So now that we are done with this, we can save this project as well. So as you're done with this, the next thing that you need to do here is you need to specify the up and down. You need to create a ocelot.json file, and that is how we're going to specify all the endpoints in there. So let's go to solution, and in here from this identity, not identity itself, we go to the gateway API, and this file must be in the root. So right click on the API gateway, then click on add, click on new item, and now let's search for JSON. Now we give it a name as ocelot.json. So that is the name that given to this file. Now when we are done, we need to go in there and now specify our upstream path and now the downstream path and other necessary sections that we need to configure. I have already prepared this beforehand because it is too delicate. You can make mistake easily. Alright, so let me just paste from here, then we go through what I have done. Now this it's simple. Yeah, simple. Like see, we're specifying the section of what we have our route, and in the route we are having our downstream path, and now we have the scheme, we have our host and port. So we have 3 in here, 3 sections. Now aside from that, you can see we have our upstream path, and now we have the HTTP method. Now this method here tells you which method are going to allow for this address. Now we have our address here, and our host here is the local host, since it's running on a local host, and this is our port. So since you're working with the user, we configure the user as 7001, and our the scheme is HTTP. Do you remember we did that? Great. So the upstream path template defines the path pattern that the Ocelot gateway listing for an incoming request. Now there is a URL path the client will use to access the API through the gateway. So that is the upstream path. Now, when you go to the downstream path, it specifies the path on the backend service. So that is what the ocelot will use to make a call to that specific endpoint. So the client can access this from the upstream path, and then the ocelot will use the downstream path to make a request from the API. Okay, so that is one. So you see from here, we have one in here, and that's for API. Then when it comes to our weather, there is also another one. Now, when we are done with this, we need to specify our global configuration, and we need to get the base URL. That is what every user will have to access this. So it's going to be like HTTPS. We have a local host with the port / then the upstream path is what the user is going to access. So it's going to be API/weather, API/user. In case you have more, API plus what you have in there. I hope you've got it right. Great. So now we have this. The next thing we're going to do here is we need to register this ocelot.json in the program.cs file. So let's make that happen. So let's go to the gateway program.cs file, and that is this project program.cs file. Maybe we can grab this ocelot name. Now in here, before the app build, we're going to say that builder.configuration.add.json. Okay, so in here, we need to specify what we copied. That is the file itself. Okay, now after that, this should be a JSON file. So that is the add.json file. And in here, let's set this optional to false. Maybe let's set false in here, and I reload change, let's set it true. So now as we update it, you need to reload it. And in here we need to have comma, then reload, on change, set this to go ahead. Okay, so after we've added this file, we need to add the ocelot itself. So that is where we need to add the service. So dot add ocelot. Now maybe we need to add a namespace. Yes, using the reference. And after that, let's come to the middleware pipeline, and we need to use it. So app.use, then ocelot.wait. Okay. Aside from that, maybe let's add calls here, because since we're going to have a request coming in, going out, well, let's add a call street. So maybe we can add a default policy, okay, whereby we allow any origin, any method, and any header, because at the end we want to perform CRUD. So it means we want to allow any method. But in case you want to specify specific headers or HTTP verbs, or within the CRUD a specific endpoint, then you can specify that in here. But for now, let's allow any method at all. Alright, so let's have our builder.services.add calls. Then in here, let's give it as option. And now with this options.add, we have default policy. So now with this default policy, let's have builder. Then in our builder, we say builder.allow any header first, dot allow any method, then we can allow any origin. That will be any address coming in. Okay, now let's terminate this, and we need to use this call. So app.use call. Alright, let's terminate this. Great. So now that we are done with this, let's build up together. Now let's set a default landing page, or is it landing URL? Check it out from the properties, launch settings, and you know from our HTTPS, not the HTTP, because there is a gateway and it is running on HTTPS. We are saying to land on Swagger, but we do not have Swagger available. So this is what we're going to do. We want to make it API, or maybe we can make this empty. Okay, so it's going to land on localhost and now the port of 7000. All right, so let's see. Now let's run the 3 projects. So you know this is running on HTTPS, so maybe let's start with the other ones on HTTP. So let's choose identity is running on HTTP, and also weather is running on HTTP, right? Okay, so in here identity, and now let's start new instance. Alright, so you can see that here it is running on port of 7001, and that is identity. And you know what to do. We get our users, and wow, we get them. Good. Now let's see from the other one as well, and that is the weather. So right click on this, let's also start, and we are expecting of a port of 7002. Now debug, and now let's start new instance as well. Now this is almost ready to, you see the 7002, good, so our ports are in line. And now let's try to get this, and well, we have the content here. Now let's run the API, the gateway, that is the heart of this video. So I click on this, and that's going to be debug, start new instance. And you can see, since we have this does not land on any page, we have this local host page can be found. So this is our gateway. Now with this gateway, if I click on this API, remember that is the upstream, so when you check from the ocelot, we have the upstream, that's a local host with the port slash the upstream, that is an API slash with a forecast. So they can grab this. Now let's go to, let's check for, now let's space it. Let's see whether we're going to get the data for the weather forecast. Alright, so we are not having it. Let's try user with the same port. And great, yeah, we have user. So you can see we have the user. Let's see, is it weather forecast or weather? When you check the controller, oh, that's weather forecast. Wow. Then let's correct it. So that's a weather forecast. And now let's check it up. Okay, yeah, still not having this weather forecast. Let's go and check API, and the controller name is weather forecast. And that is a get API, and we're not getting it. Yeah, I think I am getting the issue. When you check the configuration, you know, this is our weather forecast. We made it as weather. Great. You know, we made a mistake in here. I believe you've done the correct thing, right? That's great. Okay, so now we have this. We can go ahead and I'll run the, let's stop everything and run them again. So now that we know our identity is working, we are not going to run that. So let's run the weather forecast and then the API gateway. So our weather is active. Let's go to the gateway. Alright, so now let's try to access it, and I believe you still remember the address, right? So that is the endpoint is /API. Then we're going to have our weather forecast. Now let's try and see whether we're going to have it. And great, we have it. Can you see it? Good. That is it for today. You've learned how to create and configure an API gateway using Ocelot, unlocking the power of streamlined API management for your microservices architecture. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update from Netcode-Hub channel. If you have any questions or run into issues, drop a comment below or reach out to me on social media. Until next time, happy coding!